Welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of the P40 Warhawk, and we're assembling the wing. I'm going to pick it up right where I left off, and that will be, I believe, putting the screws into the servos in the wing. Not a big deal. It's a real short little chunk, and then we'll be on with the rest of the assembly. So let's get to it. I'm just finishing up putting in the last screw, checking it. This one, they're all nice and snug. I didn't want to show the installation of the servos, you know, driving the screws in, because you've all done that 100 times, so that would be pointless. However, I do want to show you is this rod, the Aileron control push rod. For some reason on the HS645MGs, they seem to be a little bit taller. So this might be the reason that this arm has to crank over so much on an angle to get to the top of the arm, the servo arm. To get rid of that angle, I had to mount the control rod, the push rod, to the bottom of the servo arm, not to the top, but to the bottom, to keep a straighter alignment. And same with the flap servo. It's just, I don't know if you can see that, I hope you can, but they're mounted underneath. Put the servo arm on the servo, drove the screw in. No big deal. It's just a straighter line. So that takes care of that. What I'd like to do next is bring the starboard wing up here, set it all up, hook it all up to the radio, and test the surfaces to make sure everything's functioning in the right direction, that kind of thing. I preset the ailerons and the flaps to the book. According to the book, 15 millimeter throw on the ailerons, measured from the inboard part of the aileron, and on low rates it's 13 millimeters, so that's pre-adjusted on both wings. The flaps, in the down position, it's 25 millimeters, measured from the inboard tip of the flap. So that's all preset. So everything should be neutral. Everything should move exactly the same on both wings. So let me set up the other wing, get everything hooked to the radio, and we'll check it out. Everything's set up. Flaps and ailerons are plugged into the receiver. And I need to turn everything on. Make sure I'm on the right model here. Okay, ailerons. Right aileron. This is the port wing. Aileron's down, so I'll put it in a right turn. So everything's working correctly on the ailerons. Flaps look pretty good, and everything is neutral, so everything's working. The next step that they call for is to put the plastic cap over top of the aileron horn, put the covers on the servos on the wing, and then the retracts, and then after that the little piece that the metal wing hold down purple things here I showed at the very beginning of the video, we'll have to plug in here with 2 holes here and here. These cap screws go in there, tighten them down, and that should be it for the wing once we get to that point. Cut out the wheel well, set the wheel well in, that kind of stuff. So alright, I'm going to clear this off, and we'll start with the capping of the aileron horn. Be right back. I have my plastic piece ready here. It's I don't know, it's not too stiff a plastic. I think I can do a lot of the trimming with the scissors, so I will do that first. And what they say to do is just leave a little bit of an overhang on the edges here, maybe less than a 1/16 of an inch all the way around. And then this cavity you trim out to the very edge of the side of the material and get rid of the centerpiece. So let's do that. This shouldn't take very long. These scissors seem to do a good job. I don't have to worry about chipping or anything like that. If you have Lexan scissors, that might be the best way to go. But this is working. Good enough for me, at least. And I'll take it up and around. Try to make some kind of a nice job of this. Take my time. Alright, there's the trim around the edges. Not bad, I'm going to leave it like that. And this front, I'm just going to zip that off flush in the front. Then I'm going to come up with the scissors and cut most of the material away with the scissors. Because I'm not going to be able to get up in there and cut around the corners with this, so I'm just going up inside it like that. And I think I'm just going to trim the rest of this off just to get it out of the way. Now, with the inside here, I'm just going to carve away the excess. It's easier for me. You might have a better way, which is fine. This works good for me, and what I do is I just keep carving until I'm to the edge. And that, for me, makes a cleaner job of it. I tried it different ways, and every time I tried it a different way, it made a big mess out of it, and I cut chunks out that I didn't mean to cut out. So I just do it this way. It takes a little longer, but I get a better job out of it. And just this bottom edge. I think I can get closer with the scissors and take care of that problem. And same with this other side. There we go. That's all I'm going to take out of there. It's not necessary to get it super wide open. Just enough that everything clears the aileron horn. And it'll be glued in just like that. I'll put CA glue on it, push down on it, and glue it in. What I really like to do is trim this excess material off here, but I found on the other wing that it wasn't necessary. When I glued right to the covering material, it stuck. It didn't try to peel back off or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to do on this wing. And I did clean my glue nozzle. It was not good. So and again, this is medium CA. I try to get the majority of the glue towards the inside edge. I don't want it to spill out all over the surface of my wing. So I put a good amount on the inside. And when I push down on it, the glue will flow back down and seal it up tight without going all over the wing. Okay. Try to get this centered the best that I can. Right about there. That looks pretty good. Hold that down for a moment. Get my kicker here. There we go. Okay, let me gather up the two covers. I'll bring them over, screw them down, and we'll be done with the control surfaces. I set the hatch covers in place. I had them marked when I took them off. It probably really doesn't matter, but I marked them where they went and the directions they were going. The hatches themselves are pre-drilled for the screws. You just have to find where those screw holes are and poke a little hole in them. Like that. And then you take these little dinky screws here. These are 2 by 10 millimeter. And just basically drive them in. You can pre-drill your holes, but they're so small they go in real easy. Adjust my screwdriver here. And just drive them in. Nothing to it. Piece of cake. I'll do one more and then I will shut the camera off for a second and do the rest so I don't waste footage and bore you to death on putting screws in. Something I'm sure you've done a million times yourselves. But it doesn't take much pressure to get these screws to grab. Just snug them up. You don't need to make them super tight. And that's it. When I come back, all these will be done and we'll be on to the retract. I put the covers on the wings. That's done. No big deal. Now, one of the harder parts is to cut out this wheel well. You need to cut the plastic about not quite a 1/4 of an inch or around a 1/4 of an inch in from the edge here, all the way around. And the way I'm going to do that is lay it on the bench like this. I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to approximate the cut. I could draw a line around it or something like that and follow the line, but I don't think it's going to be necessary in this case. I'm just going to score it, then I'm going to crack the plastic away after I put a score in it. It should work out okay. If not, then I'll trim it up with a pair of scissors. So here we go. Kind of a heavy score. Try not to make my lines waver. Make my lines meet up. I'll take them right on out to the edge and across the top. This isn't important up here because this gets cut off, so I'm not too worried about up in here. Just lost the tip on my knife, not a good thing. Here we go. Now for the hard part, coming around the wheel well itself. Okay, we'll try to crack it out of there. I'm not sure how well this is going to work, but give it a shot. I'm going to cut up through here with a pair of scissors. Relieve some tensions on the plastic. There's part of it. You see it just, once I get a score in there, just keep bending the plastic, flexing it, and it slowly comes away. Okay, I'm going to cut this end off with the scissors. There's just too much tension on it to get a good flex. Should be able to get it now. That's that. There it is. What I'm going to do is take a sanding block and I'll go around this as soon as I can figure out what I did with it. Be back in a minute. As you can see, I got the retract in and the hole is cut out of the wheel well for the retract. I had some technical difficulties with the video of this little segment of cutting out this wheel well. So what I'm going to do is put it up on the whiteboard, draw diagrams, show you how to cut it on there. And then after that we'll pick it up and we'll proceed on with the rest of the video. You're gonna have to tolerate my bad drawings here. Ignore this part down here for now. This is the strut area of the wheel well. This is the wing tube. I know it doesn't look like a wing tube, but it is. And here you see the cut line, which is directly, if you go parallel down on the sidewall, it's right near the middle or the bottom of the curve and the bottom of the well right here. And what I do is I lay my retract into the wing and let it sit there, and I'll mark out the front of the retract. And this little piece right here is an area you need to cut out to keep the wire on the end of the retract from chafing against the plastic. Down here you see the cut line. It's kind of shaded in, and it's parallel to the sidewall pretty much, kind of halfway into the curve, I would say, for the most part. And down here you'll see the cut line, which is almost straight down from the wall of the wheel well. What I used on mine is I flipped it over and I scored the plastic both sides and scored it across the front and cracked it out just like I did going around the retract, the plastic around the retract. Not much to it. This little notch I did just by carving it out with an X-Acto blade. So don't try to make a little loop there. You'll regret that. So that is what it looks like as far as your cutout. Let's get on with gluing it into the wing. Alright, one thing I learned about this particular retract, to run the wire, it's best to do it now so it goes where you want it to. And the way I do it, I go into the side here. There's a hole right here, so the wire ends about here, coming out of the retract itself. I loop it around, it goes back underneath, around the front of the tube, over top of the tube, outside of the wheel well, and then out over here. So I'm going to do that real quick. It's not real tough to do, it's just you can't see what you're doing. There it is. Now once it gets to here, you pull your excess as much as you can and come out down here like that. And when you put your retract in, you got to work your way around it a little bit, see? And once you're there though, everything will pop into place. So I'm going to mix up my epoxy, move some of this stuff out of my way. Have my stir stick, get rid of everything else. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this is a boring part too. You've seen me do this a lot of times, but I have to mix up a little bit more to make it all the way around. And I'm mixing just enough to cover the bottom of the cup. That should be about right. Yeah, maybe not. It's just a little off. It's gonna be a lot of extra, but that's okay. There we go. And after I set this in, I'll have to get my denatured alcohol out to clean up any excess that wants to come out and overflow. What I'm going to do is put some on the button right here, because that touches the top of the wing, the top part of the sheeting of the wing. And then I just lay it like this and spread it the best I can. A lot of this is going to ooze out around the edges, which is alright, I don't mind. It's just a little bit to clean up. Okay, we're getting there. 3/4 of the way around the circle. Just about done. One more spot. There's one more spot you have to worry about, and that's right here. This touches the tube, and you want to glue that to the tube. All right, that is it. Now it's a matter of putting this down, and you'll see the goop, the glue come out. It's going to goop out all over the place. Like that. See all the glue that come out? So I know I have it way more than enough in there. I'll keep pushing it down and holding it, make sure it stays in place. Okay, I need denatured alcohol. Be right back. I have a lot of alcohol here. Wipe up the inside. Any place I don't want the glue is where I wipe up. And you all know denatured alcohol is the right thinner for epoxy glue, so it comes off. What I'm trying to do is get as much off as I can right now, right away, before it decides it wants to set up. That's as good as it's going to get. Clean up my fingers a bit. I'm going to drop the Retract in here. And make sure everything is where I want it to be. And that looks like it's it right there. So I'm going to keep working this, making sure it sticks, because it takes pressure to keep it in place, and when it dries I want it to be nice and flush. So when this is dry, I'll be back and we'll wrap up this segment of the wing. Now that the epoxy is nice and dry, everything's down, I'm going to set the Retract in here, and I shouldn't have to take it out after this. This is going to be the final installation of the Retract. Get it down here where it belongs. There it is. Now they give you some screws for it. Let me tell you what size they are. Let's see, let's go forward a bit. They are 5 by 55 millimeter cap screws. There's a 6 by 4 meter, looks like a flat washer. And on the end, right up here, right there, is a 4 by 4 millimeter set screw, and then they have a 5 millimeter lock washer. So we'll stack these up. Lock washer first, flat washer, like that, and just kind of get it started. Do all 4 of these real quick. And once I get these screws in, I'll have to run the Retract and put it up so I can get the wheel on, which is not a big deal. It's just going to be kind of fun to be able to play with it a little bit before we move on. Okay. Run these screws in. This will take me a minute, so I'll be back shortly when the screws are all locked down. Turn the Retract on and brought it to the up position, and I removed the axle, and I'm about ready to put the tire on it. I tightened down all of the screws, just snug, not real tight, because I had a feeling that the axle was hitting the bottom of the wheel well, and causing a little bit of a bind. So I decided to go this route. So with the screw in, you have one flat washer to the outside of the head of the screw. Slide it through, put the other flat washer on there. And I like this side of the wheel better, so I'm going to flip it around so that it faces the outside. This has some weird rubber anomalies on it. Put that to the inside. And the idea is to screw this in. I have the set screw backed out a little ways. And you run this in, excuse me. You run this in as far as you can. And it's not easy, it goes in quite hard. Because there's no threads in there, so evidently you have to make your own threads. Get in there slowly. Have a little patience. What I like to do on this is put it all the way in, as far as it'll go, till it's tight and the wheel can't spin. Make sure that set screws all the way out. And it's getting really tight because there's not much room for movement. Okay, there it's tight. It's binding. Now I'll back out the screw a little bit at a time until I get a free wheel. Something like that. A little bit more, just for giggles. That's pretty good. Then, with my little ball wrench here, I'll lock down the set screw. And that goes tight against the axle bolt. Eventually. That's bottom. Okay. There it is. Okay. So far so good. Now I don't have a battery connection for this box yet, so I'm using 2 alligator clips into my battery. I got to be real careful not to touch them, otherwise everything's going to short out. Turn this on. Okay, receiver on. Let's see what happens here. Okay, there's it up. And that's down. It's as good as it gets. I suppose the next thing to do will be to put the covers over top of the wheels and cut them out. I guess you call it the wheel strut fairing. Slide that on and screw it down, and then we'll call it a wrap on this video once those pieces are on. We're down to the wheel covers, or actually the strut fairing, retract fairing, if you want to call it that. And the biggest problem with these is most of the time they don't fit. And this one is not great. There's a big gap up in here, big gap over here, and there's a trick to fixing that. Let me show you. Make sure I got all these. And another thing about the fairing is that you need to drill 6 holes into this fairing. I drilled 2 here, 2 towards the middle, and 2 towards the front. They kind of show you that in the book, approximately where to put them. So against the wing it looks like this: here, 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 over here, here, and here. And now what I'm talking about, I don't know if you can see this, so I'm not going to bother to zoom in too close, but I'm going to put this approximately where I want it. And you can see that there's a pretty good sized gap in the leading edge where they didn't sand the leading edge to the shape of this piece. So what I do is I'll take my heat gun for shrinking monocoat, and I'll heat up this inside edge. And when it gets nice, fairly warm, it only takes a couple seconds really. You set it in there and you shove it on and hold it, push down on it. It might make this bubble soft, so you don't want to push on there. So what I do is I grab it down here and just pull. And it usually pulls this right to shape. I've done it on the last, well, I did it on the previous P40 and the other wing on this new P40, and it worked out pretty good. It won't get it perfect, but it's going to make it a lot better than what it is. So let me do this real quick and show you how I do it. This is a very old heat gun, so it makes a lot of noise. And I do one side at a time. So heat the other side up a little bit so it gives just a hair on both sides. Okay, that should be enough. And you slide it on to approximately where you want it. Kind of hold it there. Watch what you're doing. And just push down. And just hold it there till it cools. Just about there. I usually push down on it, and what it does, it just makes this fiberglass piece a little bit more pliable. Actually, a lot more pliable. And that should be just about enough. It's close enough. It's right where I want it. And you can probably see, I don't know, maybe you can't, that the gap is considerably less on both sides. And from there, I hold it in place and I'll start putting the screws in. Let me find the screws here. These are 3 by 10 millimeter. Originally there's 12 in the bag. I've already completed the other wing wherever I sat it. But it's around here somewhere. Grab my screwdriver. Make sure this is exactly where I want it. Well, it looks really close to the spot. And with a little bit of pressure, pushing down on the screw, these go in pretty easy. And you don't want to over torque these either, otherwise it strips out the wood. Just snug them up real good. Just finishing up putting in the last screw. There we go. And now it's time to mark out the cut line for the strut. And how I do this is use a ruler and line it up, make it kind of snug, and then I'll open it up as I need it. The book says it's supposed to be, I think, 27 millimeters wide. Let me see what I got here. Yeah, 27 millimeters wide. They show the cutaway right here. And they show doing it before you even put the fairing on. I found out that doesn't work very well due to the fact that the fairing doesn't fit the wing very good. So it's better to cut it out after it's on there. So that's what I'm going to do. I've done this, let's see, 3 times now. The old P40 and this P40. And you want to make it as straight as possible, but as close to the strut as you can, so you can open it up some more, and whatever kind of mistakes, or not necessarily mistakes, but cuts that are too close to the strut, you can clean those up as you go. Okay, one more. Moved on me a little bit. When I cut up the strut line here, I only go a little ways at a time. That way I can look down, see my strut, and I can adjust my line after I make the initial cut. This is the hard part because you can't get a ruler to lay down in there. So you can just kind of guesstimate it, get as close as you can. Because the initial cut doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be close. And to make this cut, I use my Dremel and a cutoff wheel. Okay, put this thing together real quick. I usually put it on, this setting is about 2.5. We'll go to 3. And we'll make our first cuts here. Try not to go too deep, otherwise you'll nick your strut. Okay, I have to cut this a little better down here. Alright, and what I do is I peel this up and see where I'm at. It looks like I can go a little wider on both sides. So what I'll do is I'm going to finish cutting up here. I'm going to cut this off, and then I'll cut up all the way up to here. Okay, here we go. And I'll stop right there. Bend this side up, take a look, see what I got. Actually, it's looking fairly good. Cut that end off. Alright. Getting really close to my stop point. I'm going to take it a little at a time until I find the very front of the wheel, the retract block for the strut. So I need to mark that out. Find out what I did with my marker. Here it is. Get a lot of this debris off. My line is not going to be straight, but it'll be close enough. Okay, I'm going to be guessing here, but it's going to be short of the exact length it has to be. Here we go. Cut this piece off. And it appears I have to go a little further up. It's a slow process, but it'll get to where you want to go eventually. My line starts to go crooked back in here, so I'm going to redraw my line a little bit. It's probably going to have to be opened up a tad bit more as I go. I'm not at the width that they call for yet. And let's see. By the time that rotates, it'll be close. I'm gonna have to open this up so I can rotate the retract and see where I'm at. We'll see how that goes. Okay. I know it has to come up further, so I might as well get that done right now also. Take it up to about there. Do about the same on the other side. Okay, just a little bit of a square to cut out here, and I'm not going to take it all the way to the front. I'm going to do that with a Dremel drum sander. Okay, change this out. Got a little drum sander right here. It's about whipped, but it'll still do the job. All right. Rotation again. And that is exactly far enough, but I still have to widen this side just a bit. Okay, I'm going to widen this out, and then I'll be back shortly, and you can see after it's cleaned up and see how it went. Be back in a minute. Got it all cleaned up now, and everything seems to be working fine. I don't need to make any more cuts. I trimmed this side out a little bit, trimmed it out over here, so the wall, or the fall of the retract is in line with the slot that I cut. And there it is. Now that the retract is in, there's only two things left. One is to put the wing mount piece into the wing. It goes over on this side. I'll show you that. It's very simple. It's real quick. And the very last thing I'm going to do, but the book tells you to do the last part before any of this other stuff is done. But what that is putting in the machine guns, the fake machine guns, which are these little guys right here. So these aren't really any big deal. You pop a hole in the front of the wing where the cutouts are. You slide these in, measure out 10 millimeters, and you're done. It's just a matter of epoxying them in. So that's that. So let me clear this, all these things out, and we'll get ready to put in this little piece over here and do the machine guns, and then it'll be a wrap on this video. The first thing that has to be done is these holes have to be opened right here. Here and here. So the easiest way is to put an X through the holes with your knife. And for these I usually go in between the X's to give it a little more slack. I don't cut them directly out. Old monocoat habit, I guess. Instead I take my trim tool, and it has the round shoe on it. It's a top flight, and this is even older than the other one I showed you. And just seal it all down. If there's any major excess inside, then I cut the rest of it off later. And that's sealed down just good enough to do the job. Do the other one. Cut in between the X's. Seal those down. Do a better job on those later. Next, you take your little purple wing mount. Let me turn this. And it slides in right here. Okay. Now I'm gonna line them up with the two blind nuts on the inside that are already there. And what I like to do, which is easiest, is grab my cap screws with the hemostats like this and go in the hole just above it and set it in place. And for some reason I'm not aligned. Right there. Take a hex wrench, go on the top, get it on the cap screw, and screw it down. I'm not going to tighten it all the way. I'm going to leave it just a little bit loose. And I'm going to do the same with the second screw. And for some reason, it doesn't want to go in quite right. There it goes. No. Feels like there might be a burr in the nut. There. Pop through it. And then I'll tighten it down pretty tight. After all, this is your wing hold down. And inside the fuselage, there's two screws that go into this from the top. and lock this down into the fuselage. So it keeps your wing basically from sliding out and off. Double check. Pretty tight. Okay, one more time. There we go. And that's all there is for that hold down. You can see it from the top, the two holes, and the mount. Next are the machine guns. You can probably see the indentations for the machine guns. There's one here, here. Let's see, 1, 2, should be 3 there. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, right there. And just like before, take your knife, cut an X in the hole. Just like that. I'm going to do all 3. Next, seal the monocoat down, or seal the covering down. So I really don't know what kind of covering this is. And you want to do a fairly good job with this, since this will be visible to everybody. Okay, there they are. Got them all done. Now you can see the holes pretty well, I would imagine. On these machine guns, they really don't tell you in the instructions, but you need to cut them off. Yeah, they kind of do. They should show you kind of a picture of it, but you do need to cut them off. And I just ran it through my jigsaw, just pushed them through, not hard to cut. And this is what I have left. I need to check real quick how well these go into the wing. That one will go in. This one is not going to be cooperative. There it goes. And one more. There. I have all 3 of them sitting right here. What I did is I cut them in the jigsaw, just run through the jigsaw and cut off the ends. They give you a marking on the paper here, but they don't tell you how far to measure in to cut them. So I just cut the bell off of them. When I'm talking about the bell is this knob right here. I just cut that knob off and called it good. So let me grab my epoxy. I'm going to mix them up, and when I get it mixed up, I'll put it on these guns and slide them in, and we'll call it good. I have my ruler handy, the epoxy's mixed, the guns are sitting here. Only one thing left to do. Get some epoxy and drop it deep inside the hole. There's a secondary hole in here that's smaller than this outside hole. And I need to get a glob in there that'll coat the inside of that hole. Something like that. So I don't want them falling out. Nothing worse being at the field and have something trivial happen to your plane, like a gun falling off or something. And I'm going to put just a real little bit on the gun itself. So I don't want it squeezing out all over the place, and that would not look good. Okay. Number 1 gun is going in. Get my ruler out. drive it in, and that looks pretty close. I'm going to call that one good. 2 more to go. A little skim coat at the bottom. Get as much off as I possibly can. Slide this guy inside. Okay. Measure. $10. And 10. Last one. Left my transmitter on, it's beeping. I don't know if you can hear that, but it is. There it is. 10 millimeters across the board. There it is, guys. That's what they call for. And that pretty much concludes the build on the wing, or the assembly of the wing in this case. This concludes the end of part 2. The wings are completed. Everything is done on that as far as I can go. For the next video, I'll bring out the fuselage and we'll start on that. So I'll see you in part 3. Until then, have a good one.